It always begins the same way. They see you before you even realize you're being seen. A glance held just a second longer. Words that feel strangely tailored to your soul. Laughter at just the right moment. And suddenly, you're not walking into a relationship, you're being swept into it. Fast, intense, magnetic. Like fate remembered your name, you tell yourself this must be the one. Finally, someone who gets you. But beneath that intoxicating spark is something else entirely. A mask. Carl Jung called it the personatha social face we present to the world, not to reveal who we are, but to hide it. And narcissists? They've perfected theirs. They know how to look like love. How to echo your dreams, mirror your values, and reflect the very image of the partner you always hoped for. But it's not real. It's performance. The mask doesn't love you, it studies you. It learns you. Then it becomes what you most desire. That sense of connection you feel? It's not chemistry. It's calculation. And yet, you fall. Because how could something that feels this right be so devastatingly wrong? You ignore the whispers of doubt. You silence your intuition. You tell yourself you're just afraid of being loved. But deep down, a quiet part of you knows something's off. That intensity isn't intimacy, it's strategy. The narcissist moves quickly because time is their enemy. If you stayed still long enough, you'd see behind the curtain. So they speed things up, they skip steps, they leap past boundaries, and before you can breathe, you're entangled, not loved. Possessed. The illusion of the ideal partner is their greatest trick and your deepest wound. Because what you fell for wasn't a person. It was your own dream, reflected back to you like a flawless mirror. But that mirror shatters, and when it does, you won't just lose them. You'll feel like you lost yourself, and that's where the real work begins. You're not weak for falling. You're not naive. In fact, many of the strongest, smartest, most self-aware people get caught in the narcissist's web, not because they're broken, but because they have something the narcissist doesn't: empathy, depth, the ability to love with presence. And the narcissist feeds on that. It's not your weakness that drew them in, it's your light. But here's where it gets even more complicated. Jung believed we all carry within us unconscious images, the anima and animus, the feminine within the masculine within the feminine. And when we haven't integrated those parts, we project them onto others. We don't just see a person, we see potential. We see wholeness, completion. The lost pieces of ourselves reflected back through a stranger's smile. That's why the connection felt so cosmic. It wasn't just emotional, it was archetypal. You weren't just falling for them. You were falling into yourself, into your unhealed stories, your deepest needs, your forgotten desires. And they knew it, maybe not consciously, but instinctively. The narcissist senses who you are beneath the surface. They know how to match your rhythm, echo your wounds, mimic your strength. It's not love, it's emotional mimicry. And it's intoxicating because it feels like home. But Jung warned us, what we don't face within, we meet in the world as fate. The narcissist becomes that fate, seductive, familiar, magnetic, and by the time the mask slips, you're already attached. Not just to them, but to the version of you that you were allowed to become in their presence, even if it was a lie. And maybe that's the most dangerous part, not the love you gave, but the identity you surrendered in order to keep feeling it. But now comes the question that changes everything. What if the love you thought you found was never about them at all? What if it was a callback to you? It never starts with a scream. It starts with a whisper. A look that makes you question yourself. A joke that feels more like a jab. A comment wrapped in kindness but sharp enough to pierce your confidence. You're too sensitive. You misunderstood. That's not what I said. And so, you start to doubt. Not them, you. That's the genius of gaslighting. It doesn't erase the truth, it rewrites your memory of it. Carl Jung said that what we deny in ourselves becomes part of our shadow, and the narcissist is a master at using that shadow against you. They see your wounds, your longing for connection, your fear of abandonment. And they manipulate it not with force, but with precision, subtle, almost invisible, like emotional sleight of hand. One day they praise you, lift you, worship your light. The next, they dim it, not overtly, just enough to make you wonder if you imagined the glow in the first place. And you start adjusting just a little. You speak less, laugh quieter. You hesitate before expressing your needs, afraid they'll twist your words or withdraw their warmth. The dance has begun, not the one you signed up for, but the one you can't seem to stop. And that's the most dangerous part. Because this isn't chaos, it's calculated erosion. You're being undone slowly, quietly under the guise of love. You'll hear contradictions, "I love you," and "You're too much," "I want you," and "Why are you always so needy?" These double messages are not accidents. They are control mechanisms, a system designed to destabilize your sense of reality, and it works. Your once steady intuition now stutters, your boundaries blur. Your voice softens until you can't hear it anymore. And all the while, you're still trying to make it work, still trying to love them hard enough to bring back the version they showed you at the start. But that version was never real. Only a mask, now discarded. What's left is the cold machinery of control masked as romance. The longer you stay, the more of yourself you lose. Until one day, you look in the mirror and wonder, when did I disappear? By the time you realize you're in a trap, you're already too deep to climb out easily. Not because you don't want to, but because something inside you now needs them. That's the trauma bond, the invisible chain that ties you not just to the person, but to the cycle of hope and devastation they create. You crave their approval the same way you crave oxygen after being underwater too long. You don't just love them, you depend on them for relief from the very pain they caused. And that is no accident. Carl Jung warned that what we don't bring to consciousness rules us from the shadows. And narcissists thrive in that darkness. They don't just hurt you, they train you to seek comfort from the hand that strikes. That's the trap. They create the wound, then offer themselves as the cure. But the cure is temporary. A hit of dopamine, a flicker of warmth before the next freeze. And you stay because leaving feels like giving up on the love you were promised. Because they dangle just enough kindness to keep you hoping. But hope, in this case, is not a virtue, it's a weapon. The narcissist learns your emotional blueprint, your need to be understood, your hunger for connection, your fear of being alone. And they use it, not openly, strategically. They pull away just long enough for panic to set in, then return just in time to soothe the withdrawal. You mistake this pattern for passion, for fate, but it's addiction, emotional addiction. And like any addiction, it rewires your nervous system, conditions your soul. You become loyal to your own destruction, not because you don't know better, but because the part of you that does has been buried under the weight of survival. You're not staying because you're weak, you're staying because you've been psychologically trained to see pain as proof of love. But real love doesn't need you to suffer to earn it. Real love doesn't play games with your mind, doesn't disappear when you need it most, doesn't make you beg for crumbs. And until you name the trap, you can't escape it. The first step isn't walking away, it's waking up. The person you loved never existed, and that may be the most devastating truth to face. Because what you fell for wasn't the myth, was the version they built for you. Jung called it the persona mask one wears to navigate society, to fit in, to be accepted. For most people, the persona is a filter. For narcissists, it's a fortress. They construct it with precision, charm, confidence, wit, attentiveness. Everything you ever wanted, wrapped in a human being. But it's not who they are, it's who they need you to see. And it works. Because you didn't just fall in love, you projected meaning onto the mask. You filled in the gaps. You assumed depth where there was only performance. And by the time the cracks appeared, you were already attached. You mistook the rehearsed smile for sincerity. You mistook control for passion. You mistook manipulation for intimacy. But beneath the mask is a void of false self that doesn't know how to connect, only how to conquer. They mimic love, but they don't feel it. Not the way you do. Because love requires vulnerability. It requires truth. And for the narcissist, truth is dangerous. So they keep performing, even as the mask begins to slip. And you, still holding on to hope, keep pretending not to see. You keep reaching for the version of them that existed only in the beginning, that idealized reflection of your own desires, but that version wasn't real, it was bait. A character designed to hook your heart and hijack your mind. And the longer you stay, the more you twist yourself into someone they can tolerate. You shrink. You adapt. You become a reflection of their needs just as they once mirrored yours. Only one of you was ever sincere. And now you're left grieving not just a relationship but a fantasy. The love you thought you had. The future you thought you were building. The person you thought you knew. But illusions don't die quietly. They shatter. And when they do, you're left holding broken pieces of a story that never truly belonged to you. You didn't lose them. You lost the lie. There's a reason you found them, and a reason they found you. It wasn't random. It wasn't bad luck. It was a mirror. Carl Jung said the shadow is everything we refuse to acknowledge about ourselves, our fears, our wounds, our unmet needs, and until we face it, we are destined to meet it in the people we love. The narcissist didn't just see you, they activated you. They triggered your old pain. The part of you that still doesn't feel worthy, the part of you that believes love must be earned, proved, chased. And in that space, they entered like fate. But it wasn't fate. It was unfinished work. You weren't weak, you were unhealed. And that's what made the cycle feel so familiar. Because this wasn't just about them. This was about you. About the parts of yourself you've hidden away, the part that stayed quiet to avoid conflict, the part that overgave to feel needed, the part that confused pain with passion because love, for you, was always just out of reach. And the narcissist knew exactly where to land. Shadow meets shadow, and what follows isn't love. It's recognition. A silent agreement between unhealed parts. You play the pleaser, the fixer, the empath. They play the victim, the star, the controller. It feels magnetic, cosmic even, but it's a trauma bond disguised as destiny, and it only begins to unravel when you turn inward, when you stop asking, "Why did they do this to me?" and start asking, "Why did I allow it?" That question breaks the spell, because now you're not blaming, you're awakening. Shadow work isn't pretty. It's not spiritual poetry. It's the raw, brutal confrontation with your own patterns. And it's the only way out, because once you own your shadow, they can't use it against you. Once you meet the wounded parts with compassion, no one can weaponize them again. This was never just about escaping the narcissist. It was about escaping the lie you told yourself about what you deserved. And now finally you get to tell a new story. One where your healing doesn't need a villain. Only truth. It starts slowly. First, it's a suggestion, "I don't think your friend really supports you." Then it becomes a concern, "Your family doesn't understand us." And finally, it's a rule, spoken or implied. It's us or them. The narcissist doesn't just want your love, they want your world. And so, piece by piece, they pull you away from it, not with force, but with persuasion. Not with threats, but with doubts. And you, wanting to keep the peace, wanting to protect the fragile version of love you think you've found, comply. You text less, you cancel plans. You stop sharing details of the relationship with anyone who might see clearly what you're not ready to admit, and before you realize it, you're alone. Not just physically, spiritually, emotionally. The distance they create between you and your support system becomes the same distance between you and yourself. Your inner compassant's strong, once guiding begins to spin. Jung spoke of individuation as the process of becoming who you truly are. But he warned, it requires separation. And this is where the pain sharpens. Because the narcissist doesn't just isolate you from others, they dissolve your identity. They chip away at your confidence, your opinions, your instincts. They erase you in the name of love, and you let them. Because at some point, you stop trusting yourself. The same voice that once said, This doesn't feel right, now whispers. Maybe it's just me. And in that whisper, the last of your certainty disappears. You don't recognize yourself. Your laughter feels foreign. Your desires, muted. You are no longer living, you are managing. Walking on eggshells. Making yourself smaller just to avoid the next eruption. The narcissist doesn't want a partner, they want a reflection. And the more you become a mirror, the less of you remains. But here's the paradox. This very erasure is the beginning of awakening. Because when everything falls away, when you're stripped of roles, titles, masks, you meet the raw, aching truth of who you really are beneath it all. And that meeting, though born in pain, is the start of liberation. Individuation begins the moment you decide to stop disappearing. They made you feel like a goddess. At first, like every word you spoke was gold, like your presence was oxygen. They watched you with wide eyes and listened as if every syllable unraveled a secret of the universe. This is what they do. It's called idealization. You become not a person, but a pedestal. Worshipped, adored, elevated, not because of who you are, but because of what they need to see in you. But pedestals don't last. They were never meant to, because what the narcissist builds, they also destroy. And so comes the fall, subtle at first. A sigh, a sharp tone, a joke that stings. Then colder, sharper. They don't laugh like they used to. Don't call you beautiful anymore. You start to wonder what changed. And here's the cruelty, nothing changed. You didn't do anything wrong. You didn't become less. They just never saw the real you in the first place. The person they idealized was an image, a projection. And once your humanness appears, your needs, your flaws, your boundaries, they punish you for it. This is devaluation, the sudden shift from everything to nothing, from adored to annoying, from cherished to criticized. It's psychological whiplash, and it's designed to break you. Because in that confusion, in that sudden descent from heaven to hell, you become desperate for the high again. You start working for it, performing, pleasing, trying to earn back the love that was never real to begin with. Jung understood this inner fragmentation, the psychic split that occurs when we are caught between two realities, the one where we are loved and the one where we are discarded. That split creates internal chaos. You question your worth, your sanity. You live in emotional vertigo, constantly wondering which version of you they'll see today. The cycle continues. Idealize, devalue, repeat. And with every loop, you lose a little more of your center, until love becomes a battleground and survival becomes a strategy. But here's the truth they never wanted you to know. The love you're starving for isn't theirs to give. It never was. It's the love you must now return to yourself. And that reclamation begins the moment you stop climbing back onto the pedestal land, start walking away from it. It doesn't happen all at once. Awakening rarely does. It comes like a whisper in a storm, a flicker of clarity in the fog. One day, you're sitting in silence, your eyes tired, your chest hollow, and something inside you stirs. Not anger, not yet, not even courage, just recognition. A quiet knowing that says, this is not love. This is not what I was meant for. It's the moment your psyche begins to rebel. The mask they wear no longer hypnotizes you. The praise sounds hollow. The apologies don't reach you. Something deep within the part of you that still remembers who you were before all this starts to rise. Jung believed that suffering, if faced with consciousness, could be a door to transformation. That pain wasn't the end but the beginning of something ancient stirring inside us. That's what this is. A rupture, a break in the pattern. Not from them, from you. The spell weakens. You no longer chase the high. You no longer wait for the good days to come back. You begin to watch instead, observe. And in that pause, something powerful happens. Your inner voice, silenced for so long, starts to speak. At first it's fragile, shaky, but unmistakably yours. You are not crazy. This is not your fault. You were never too much. These truths land not like lightning but like a return. And as they settle in your body, a shift begins. You still feel the fear, the longing, the grief. But now, you also feel something else: choice. For the first time, you see the door. Maybe you're not ready to walk through it yet. That's okay. Awareness is the beginning. The turning point isn't a dramatic exit, it's a quiet awakening, one that says, I see you, I see me, and I will not go back to sleep. If clarity is the first spark, fear is the flood that follows. You feel the pull to leave. You know it's no longer love, but you stay, not because you want to, but because leaving feels like death. And in a way it is. The death of the illusion, the death of who you became to survive it. Jung spoke of the complex emotional patterns formed from old wounds that unconsciously control our lives. This is the root of why you stay. The narcissist didn't just hurt you, they activated a complex buried deep in your psyche. The part of you that was once abandoned, dismissed, neglected, that child within who learned that love must be earned, that peace comes through appeasement, that worth is conditional. The relationship becomes a replay, a psychological echo of something unfinished. And your nervous system, wired by years of emotional history, confuses the familiar with the safe. You're not just afraid of them, you're afraid of the silence after, the unknown, the rebuilding. Who will I be without this? What if no one else loves me? What if I'm the problem? These aren't just questions, they're barriers. Emotional paralysis wrapped in guilt. And the narcissist knows this. They feed it. You'll never find someone like me. You're too sensitive. No one else would stay with you. They say it with venom or with a smile. But the aim is always the same: keep you afraid. Keep you doubting. Because as long as you fear your freedom, you won't reach for it. But Jung reminds us the complex can be integrated. The wound can be witnessed without it becoming your identity. You do not have to keep reliving the past to finally heal it. The fear of leaving is real. It is valid. But it is not prophecy. It's just the final gate before liberation. You don't have to run. But you do have to listen. When your soul says, enough, that is not betrayal. That is self-rescue. And even if your legs tremble, even if your voice shakes, you are already braver than you think, because you've begun to imagine a life where you are finally free. There comes a moment, quiet but unmistakable, when the illusion shatters. You look at them, and suddenly, it doesn't hit the same. The charm feels rehearsed, the stories recycled. The intensity you once mistook for passion now feels suffocating. That's not just progress, it's awakening. You've begun to see the game. Carl Jung said that what remains unconscious will rule your life, and you will call it fate. But the moment you name the manipulation, it stops being fate. It becomes a choice. The narcissist's greatest weapon was your unawareness, not of their tactics but of your worth. They gaslit, love-bombed, twisted, controlled, not because you were blind, but because you were trying to see the best in them. That's your gift, and your vulnerability. But now, your vision sharpens. You start connecting the dots, the cycles, the silences, the sudden warmth when you pull away, the cold when you need closeness. You begin to call things what they are. That wasn't a bad day. That was emotional manipulation. That wasn't tough love. That was devaluation. Naming is powerful. Naming turns confusion into clarity. It dissolves shame. It returns the narrative to your hands. You stop justifying, stop shrinking, stop making excuses for behavior you'd never accept from anyone else. And in that clarity, the spell breaks. The emotional fog lifts. Not all at once, but in waves. You still ache, you still grieve, but you are no longer under their spell. And here's the truth they never wanted you to know. Once you see clearly, you can't unsee it. Once your soul says no more, their tricks lose their grip. Because awareness is the one thing they can't control. And when your reality is no longer for sale, their illusion crumbles. Not because they changed, but because you did. You don't return to who you were before them. That person is gone. And that's not a tragedy, it's an evolution. What comes next is not a reconstruction, it's a remembering, a realignment. A reconnection with the self that was always there, beneath the pleasing, beneath the silence, beneath the survival. Jung called this process individuation, the journey toward wholeness. It is not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming fully yourself. And after the storm of narcissistic entanglement, this work is sacred. You begin slowly, you rest, you unlearn. You stop asking, "What did they want me to be?" and start asking, "What do I want to become?" You reclaim the simple things, your laugh, your voice, your solitude. You reconnect with forgotten passions. You tend to wounds without shame. You learn to say no without guilt. You start to feel the weight of your own boundaries not as walls, but as sacred space. There will be days where doubt creeps in, days when the past still whispers. But now, you answer from a different place, from a deeper knowing. The narcissist fractured your identity so you would need them to feel whole. But what they didn't anticipate was this. Their destruction cleared the path for your return, not to innocence, but to integrity. Not to perfection, but to presence. You begin to trust yourself, not because you have all the answers, but because you finally stopped abandoning your own voice to keep someone else comfortable. Wholeness isn't loud. It's not a performance. It's the quiet confidence of walking through life unmasked, of no longer needing to be rescued, chosen, or approved of belonging to yourself so deeply no one can use love as leverage again. Individuation is not a finish line, it's a lifelong unfolding. But this time, the journey is yours. And that is the beginning of everything. Some call it cold, others say it's cruel. But the truth is, no contact is not revenge, it's rescue. It's not punishment, it's protection. Because the longer you stay in proximity to the person who broke you, the longer your healing is delayed. No contact is not about hate, it's about clarity. It's the line you draw when you finally realize that you can't detox in the same space that made you sick. Carl Jung wrote that people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. But when you go no contact, that's exactly what you're choosing to do. Face yourself. And in doing so, you reclaim the one thing they tried to take from you, your reality. This isn't about deleting a phone number. It's about deleting a narrative. The story that says love is pain, that your needs are too much, that your value depends on their approval. Going no contact is a psychological cleanse, a soul-level detox. You are not erasing a person, you are releasing the illusion they sold you. Because every time you re-engage, even with a simple message, you reopen the door to confusion. And confusion is their habitat. It's where they thrive. But clarity? That's where you begin. The space between you and the narcissist is not empty, it is sacred. It is where your nervous system resets, where your inner voice returns, where the fog finally lifts. And yes, it will hurt. Not because you lost them, but because you're grieving the part of yourself that believed their love would be enough. But that grief is healing. It's what happens when your soul starts choosing itself. The world may not understand. They don't need to. This is between you and your peace. No contact is not the end of the story, it's the first page of the chapter where you stop surviving and start living. You don't rise from this untouched. You don't emerge soft and shiny. No. You emerge with scars, with stories, with eyes that now see in layers. You're not going back to the girl who trusted too easily, who made herself small for the sake of harmony. She's gone. And that's not loss, that's growth. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And becoming doesn't happen in comfort. It happens in the rupture, in the fall, in the choosing, again and again, to no longer abandon yourself. Integration means you gather every broken piece, not to pretend it never shattered, but to arrange it into something truer, stronger. You are not naive anymore. You don't confuse intensity with love. You don't trade your boundaries for belonging. You don't beg to be chosen, because now you choose. You choose peace over drama, silence over chaos, wholeness over performance. You still feel deeply. But now you know when your empathy is being used against you. You still give, but only where there is reciprocity. Integration is the gift of awareness without bitterness, power without vengeance, strength without the need to prove. It's not about forgetting what happened. It's about remembering who you became because of it. There will be days when you ache, when a memory tries to seduce you back into the old story, but you'll recognize the voice now. You'll hear the lie before it settles. And that's when you'll know you are no longer living from the wound, you are living from the wisdom it gave you. This is not innocence. This is earned clarity, and it will guide you into every new chapter, every new relationship, every choice from here on. You didn't just survive a narcissist, you reclaimed yourself, and that is a transformation no one can undo. You didn't just walk through fire, you became something inside it. And know on the other side you carry more than survival. You carry alchemy, because this was never just about escaping someone toxic. It was about meeting yourself in the wreckage. Carl Jung wrote that the gold is in the shadow. And what he meant is this: what breaks you also reveals you. Inside the trauma, there was a map. Inside the betrayal, there was a mirror. And now, as you sift through the ashes of what was, you begin to see it. Not just what you lost, but what you found. You found a voice that no longer trembles, a boundary that no longer bends, a heart that still loves but no longer sacrifices itself to be seen. That's the transcendence, not forgetting the wound, but turning it into wisdom. You don't erase the past. You alchemize it. You let it teach you how to spot a mask from a mile away, how to walk away without needing to be understood, how to sit in silence and still feel whole. You no longer romanticize chaos. You no longer mistake tension for intimacy. You no longer need to be rescued. You've become your own anchor, your own mirror, your own healer. The narcissist didn't give you that. They only handed you the invitation. It was you who chose to rise. It was you who turned the collapse into clarity, the pain into perspective. And now you carry something rare: empathy with edges, kindness with discernment, love with standards. You know now that true power isn't loud. It's not a show. It's the calm that says, I will never abandon myself again. That is the gold. That is the gift. And no one can take it from you. Because it wasn't given, it was earned. Through every sleepless night, every shattered illusion, every boundary rebuilt. This is not just healing. This is transmutation. This is your rebirth. Not as who you were, but as who you were always meant to be. And maybe that's the final freedom. To look back with no hatred, no regret, and say thank you for the lesson. But I'm the one who gave it meaning. This story was brutal, but this story on the right-hand side is even more insane.